Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into an invisible but absolutely massive force that either holds entire nations together or completely tears them apart. It's sitting right there at the foundation of every single government on Earth, but we almost never pause to actually dissect it. Seriously, think about it for a second. Why do millions of people voluntarily follow the rules set by just a handful of leaders? Most of the time, nobody is holding a weapon to our heads, forcing us to obey the law. We pay our taxes, we stop at red lights, and we generally listen to the authorities. So what's the glue here? What makes an entire society fall into line without the constant, exhausting threat of physical force? Well, the secret ingredient is political legitimacy. This is defined as the extent to which the public genuinely accepts a government's authority as morally right and proper. It's this deep-seated belief that the structures and the leaders in charge possess a fundamental quality of rightness. People aren't just obeying because they have to, they're obeying because they naturally feel like it's the appropriate thing to do. Now, compare that to just naked coercion. Sure, a government can try to rule purely through fear and force, the classic iron fist, but history shows us that is incredibly expensive and fundamentally unstable. It burns through vast political resources. Legitimate authority, on the other hand, is the ultimate golden ticket. It secures long-term survival through voluntary consent. People comply not because they're terrified, but because of a shared sense of propriety. To really get a grip on how this plays out in the real world, we're going to quickly walk through 5 key areas. Defining political legitimacy, the sources of political authority, legitimacy versus effectiveness, what happens when legitimacy breaks down, and finally, the major challenges modern systems are facing today. All right, let's jump right into section 1, defining political legitimacy, and why it is the absolute foundation of stability. Political scientist Robert Dahl hit the nail on the head here. He points out that leaders aren't just trying to dodge a revolt. They actually want us to believe their decisions are normally right and proper. That's the crucial pivot. True authority is achieved when raw influence is magically converted into widely accepted rightness. Once they do that, boom, they are governing with legitimate authority. Moving on to section 2, sources of political authority. Basically, why do we actually follow? Okay, so if it isn't just the threat of a jail cell, where is this authority coming from? The source material highlights 3 main bases. First up is legal authority. You obey because you respect the constitutional rulebook. Then there's traditional authority, which is basically the, hey, we've literally always done it this way mindset, validated by history. And third, and honestly, this is the wild one, is charismatic authority. This one completely bypasses the laws and the history books and relies entirely on the pure magnetic charm, heroic deeds, or mass appeal of one specific leader. Let's look at section 3, legitimacy versus effectiveness. This creates a really crucial matrix, and this is where things get super interesting. Because, you see, having legitimacy is absolutely not the same thing as being effective. Political sociologist S.M. Lipset defines effectiveness as pure performance. Does the government actually solve problems, grow the economy, and satisfy the basic needs of society? And, crucially, does it keep the heavy hitters, like the military and big business, happy? So think of effectiveness as the practical delivery of results, while legitimacy is the moral right to sit in the big chair. When you take these 2 independent forces, legitimacy on one side and effectiveness on the other, and map them together, you get a brilliant 2x2 matrix that basically predicts a country's ultimate stability. Let's see how this actually plays out. Up in box A, you've got your stable, long-lasting democracies. Highly legitimate, highly effective. The dream scenario. But look at box C. A government can absolutely be effective without being legitimate. Think 1920s Germany. They actually had some economic wins, but powerful internal groups never respected their right to rule, making the whole thing incredibly fragile. Now flip that around to box B. Look at the democracies in the 1930s during the Great Depression. Their effectiveness completely tanked, right? But their deep-seated legitimacy meant they somehow miraculously survived catastrophic economic ruin without losing their freedom. And box D? No legitimacy, no effectiveness. That is a fast track to total collapse or military dictatorship. Which brings us to section 4, when legitimacy breaks down and we hit massive crises of change. So what actually happens when this delicate balance just shatters? Well, a crisis of legitimacy is almost always triggered by a major historical transition. Think about it. In the 19th century, industrial workers suddenly wanted a slice of the political pie. In the 20th century, it was colonial subjects demanding self-determination.
Crises happen when these newly energized groups demand a seat at the table, and the establishment slams the door in their face. Lock them out for too long, and they might turn to extreme ideologies, putting the entire foundation of the government in mortal danger.
Living through these transitions is profoundly weird and unsettling. Alexis de Tocqueville captured this perfectly. He described the utter anxiety citizens feel during chaotic shifts, like moving from aristocratic rule to democratic republics. When the spell of tradition is broken and all the old customs vanish, people are left in a state of deep distress. You're stuck on a dangerous tightrope. The new system hasn't proven it actually works yet, and the old system has entirely lost its magic. And this brings up a genuinely bizarre historical quirk. You would think the best way to modernize is to just sweep away all the old traditions to start fresh, right? Well, actually, the European democracies that decided to keep their monarchs around, stripped of real power obviously, often ended up being way more stable during massive social upheavals. Why? Because the crown acted like a giant pacifier. It gave conservative, traditionalist folks a familiar symbol to rally around, keeping them loyal and inside the tent instead of outside trying to burn it down. Finally, we arrive at Section 5. Modern system challenges, specifically looking at community, participation, and distribution. Because make no mistake, even today's most established systems are being severely tested. They have to juggle three huge challenges constantly. First, the community challenge, getting a diverse population to actually feel a sense of national consensus and identity. Second, the participation challenge, making sure new elites and loud emerging groups get a voice so they don't feel completely alienated. And third, the distribution challenge. Because let's face it, modern citizens absolutely expect their governments to step in, manage wealth, and ensure some level of social justice. Dropping the ball on just one of these can drain a government's moral authority in a heartbeat. At the end of the day, no society is completely tension-free. But as the source material makes clear, a political system survives by actively managing these tensions through negotiation and consensus. When a government can actually process conflict and find middle ground, it's a huge flex of political development, and it seriously reinforces their legitimate authority. But if they just let those frustrations pile up, you're looking at severe political decay. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. When you look at the political landscape around you right now, whether in your own country or just scanning the global news, ask yourself this. Is the government you're looking at sustained by true moral legitimacy and genuine consensus of its people? Or are they just scraping by, resting on a fragile foundation of temporary effectiveness that could totally evaporate during the next crisis? It is literally the question that decides the future of any nation. Thanks for exploring this topic with us today.